Hey guys, this is a Patreon Q&A. If you would like to be in next week's video, simply check out the link in the description and you can sign up there. I'm also going to be going into spoilers for all of the series I'm going to be talking about. MajinBoros asks, after the recent redraw, I was wondering why does God himself show up? It looked like he only gave power to Garo, and that's it, but it's implying that he's going to join the fight as well. Maybe the reason why we got the redraw is to first see the POV of Blast and his buddies, because maybe they are the ones that could see God and are going to help fight him off while Saitama fights Garo himself in the next chapter, and it's Blast and the rest showing up to prepare to fend off God. So before I get into this, let me catch you up on chapter 164's redraw. So it seemed like Saitama versus Garo was coming to an end because Saitama eventually punched Garo in his big monster form hard enough as to where it broke him out of the monster shell that he was in, leaving him in his seemingly unconscious human form. But then suddenly God himself starts speaking to Garo, and we see this huge circular cloud formation form. Then God's feet come out of these clouds and start walking on water towards Garo. Then God, who impersonates Bang in this sequence, convinces Garo to take his help, therefore giving him his power, essentially sealing the deal between himself and God, something that you don't want to do in this series. We've seen that this is one of God's deceptive practices. He appeared as Blast before Tatsumaki, trying to trick her to accept his influence, and now that this has successfully happened to Garo, he reappears in front of Saitama in his new awakened form, Cosmic Fear mode, which I guess is leading us to the true final battle of this arc possibly. But earlier in the chapter we saw Garo knock Saitama through this mountain, and it caused a shockwave to reverberate throughout the entire earth. And then we cut over to Blast and his team, who are in another dimension. He says the earth's magnetic and gravitational fields are going crazy. A spatial distortion is creating a hole in the dimensional seal. So it's possible that Garo doing this has caused this hole in the dimensional seal, and in my opinion this dimensional seal is what's keeping God trapped. Like, this other dimension that they're in is where God is currently being held. So this hole, I'm assuming, has given him more freedom to have tangible effects on reality possibly. That's why we see those clouds and the lightning forming. But as we also see, the onlookers can't actually see God's feet coming out of them. Blast also says, we've got to hurry up and repair it. And I think that's probably going to happen, which brings me back to the original question, is God going to show up and actually fight here? And I don't think he is, because it's way too soon in the series for something like that to happen. I'm pretty sure Saitama is just going to fight Cosmic Fear Garo here, and then that will lead us to the end of this arc possibly, because if God does show up in tangible form, like this dimensional seal completely breaks, it would kind of be taking us to the end of the series, which we are very far from. And maybe some of you do think that the manga is going to end soon, but in my opinion, I don't think that's the case at all. It would directly conflict with all of the setup that one has been doing throughout this arc, especially with the redraws and everything. So I just think it's likely that Blast and his team are going to repair the hole in this dimensional seal here, re-trapping God and keeping him where he was initially, meaning that, you know, going forward he's going to have the same kind of influence on reality and humanity that he initially had. And then Saitama will eventually defeat Cosmic Fear Garo here, and I do think that he'll wind up being a human again once this is all said and done. Then again, you know, anything could happen. The story is radically changing, as we could see. I mean, just the redraw in chapter 164 completely changed everything in itself. But I think we're very far away from seeing like a fully tangible form of God in the story, because that's like endgame stuff, which is maybe like 10 years away possibly, somewhere around there. There's so much that needs to happen in the story before we get to that stuff, like so much. Extinction Teen 75 asks, if it is actually Boros who is with Blast, do you think that could mean that Blast's group could all be dead and forced to watch over God's prison? So I don't think that's the case, although it is possible, but that Boros race member that we see, I don't think is Boros. He looks different from Boros. But also we have that Beast King looking guy, which, you know, also leads to the possible theory of these being dead individuals. But who is forcing them to watch over God's prison, and how did they come back to life, or what is even going on with them if they are dead? I just think it's more likely that these are other beings from different planets. Mr. Toby 1018 asks, where do you rank Garo's final move that's breaking the seal in terms of feats? Would you say it's in the top 3, excluding Saitama's feats? So yeah, absolutely in the top 3. Maybe it's number 2 aside from Saitama's stuff, because I'm thinking like Sairochi's beam cutting off that piece of Earth is probably number 1, right? So I guess number 2 would have to be like the mountain destruction sending a shockwave through Earth. Anomaly asks, how would you feel that if we found out right before Prime All Might fought All for One, he fought in some secret alien war or invasion we never knew about in space, or in some colony versus something like Boros? So I think that would kind of break this story at this point, because nothing fantastical has remotely happened like that in the series, and also it would just change everything, and it would need the story to go in a different direction going forward. And since it's ending, I don't think we'll ever get a reveal like that. The closest we'll get is that there's some kind of extraterrestrial origin to quirks or something like that, and I think it would be something better for a sequel series that I also don't think that we'll ever get either. Crimson asks, do you think that when Blast visited the ninja village the second time, it was actually God in the skies looking for strong fighters or trying to inspire acts of revenge? So this is a good question, and I think someone else has brought this up before. Now, it is possible, but I just don't think that's the case, because when God does appear as someone else, it doesn't seem like he has the ability to fully interact with reality that way. Like, I don't think he literally gains like a tangible form and is able to like straight up kill people. It more so seems like he appears as an image to you, and then you either accept his influence or not. Now, it's possible that this was all just like some kind of genjutsu, that he appeared in front of Sonic, but if that was the case also, it was all for naught because Sonic didn't accept his deal if he did give him any. I think what we actually saw was literally Blast, and he did straight up kill the ninja younglings because Blast is like no nonsense, especially when it comes to the God and the cube stuff. I could be wrong, of course, but this just doesn't line up with what we've seen so far of God appearing as others, unless there's more levels to it that we're just not aware of yet, or at least I'm not. Boxsteam asks, do you believe that Blast and his crew will try to target Garo at any point, in which case Saitama might step in and try to defend Garo from attempted execution? So it is possible that he might show up afterwards, but I think if he were to see Garo not being affected by God stuff anymore, he might not care, especially if there's not like a cube or any direct influence involved anymore. But even if this does happen, I don't think it will lead to Saitama fighting Blast. I mean, yeah, a couple years ago, I for sure thought that Saitama was going to fight Blast, but now that Blast has been way more established, it just seems unlikely to me at this point. It would also kind of hurt Blast's aura and stock at this point, because Saitama would just dominate him. Unless Blast does some like Doctor Strange stuff to Saitama and like messes with them and avoids taking contact or whatever, but I think we'll more or less kind of see what happens at the end of the webcomic with the other S-Class heroes trying to kill Garo, and then Saitama not being on board with it and him trying to talk to Garo, which will eventually lead to him running away. Delamante asks, which character from the Straw Hats has the highest chance of dying before the end of the story? So this is a good question, and I was thinking about it, and they all kind of have motivations and goals that really needs for them to see the end of the series at least. So I'm thinking that maybe Jinbei has the best chance of dying, I guess. He seems likely, but I don't think he will, or at least I hope he doesn't. I hope none of the Straw Hats die, to be honest. TimSim88 asks, was the latest One Punch Man chapter a 10 out of 10? I don't think so, but it was probably a 9 for sure. I think I probably have too high of a standard for a 10 out of 10, especially compared to other people. Like, I think I've only given 2 or 3 10 out of 10 since I've started making videos. So like a chapter really needs to be near flawless and really special for me to feel that it's like a genuine 10 out of 10, to be honest. ShadoStorm asks, how do you think the Monster Association arc would have changed if Watchdog Man was involved in the invasion of the Monster Association? So it would have changed a little bit, but I don't think too much. And while we don't fully know how strong Watchdog Man is yet, I don't think he's powerful enough to really have changed the tide of events that much. Like, I don't think he really could have done much to Sairochi. I highly doubt he could have fought against Platinum S. And all of the Garo stuff, I don't really think he could have changed much with that either. So he probably would have did much more than Metal Bat, but not enough to have significant change to the story. William H asks, if God was to appear before Saitama Saitama in another form, who would he disguise himself as? So that's a good question. And on the surface, it would probably be Genos, but if God really did have intimate knowledge of Saitama, then either he would appear before him as his family, which not even we, the audience, are aware of. Maybe we never will be. But I think a good strategy would be Moomin Rider, because it seems like Saitama really respects him and trusts him the most of all the characters, to be honest. I mean, in the end, Saitama wouldn't be tricked or persuaded by God in any way, but I think his best chance would be Moomin Rider, because Saitama would be more inclined to believe him, more so than even Genos and King, in my opinion. Tempest asks, if Bang had Metal Bat's ability, do you think he could defeat Awakened Garo, Boros, Saitama, or Blast? No. I don't think he would even come close to defeating them, to be honest. Metal Bat's ability doesn't really go as far as we initially thought. I mean, he does get pretty strong, but as we see, there's still kind of like a limit to it. I mean, he really couldn't even get as strong as pre-Awoken Garo in that sequence going against Sage Centipede. So if Bang did have that ability, he would get stronger, of course, but I don't think he's getting as strong as Boros or Blast or what the implied strength of Cosmic Fear Awakened Garo is. That's pretty much it for the video today, guys. I want to thank all of my patrons for continuing to support me. Thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate it. And once again, if you would like to be in next week's video, simply check out the link in the description. You can sign up there. And if you liked the video, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.